you don't need someone else to mediate for you in your relationship with God. That's the biggest lie that's ever been told to mankind, I think, is that you need someone here on the planet doing it for you.
Yeah. And understanding human nature, when people have power, they're going to do everything they can within their power to retain that power.
Yeah, and to grow it.
And to grow it.
How you been, brother?
Pretty good, brother. How you doing?
Good. So
You looking good today.
hey, thank you. Every day's a vacation
Hell yeah.
if you wear a Hawaiian shirt. But dude, so what do you think of the AI, or the authentic identity name for the podcast?
I love it, man. AI,
Artificial
intelligence. We actually use ChatGPT. It's for those of you who don't know, it's an AI that just kind of helps you.
It just does all your thinking for you.
All you're thinking for you. If you need a script or anything, give it some of the right prompting, and it's amazing the stuff it could spit out. So actually, this podcast, because we're kind of thick in the head, kind of dull. So
yeah, this whole podcast is generated by ChatGPT.
Yeah, we put in our ideas, and then it spits out what we say. We got a teleprompter over there, But we actually memorized it. So if you don't see us looking at it all the time, that's just because we memorized the script.
Yeah, we memorize it. Whatever the AI gives us, we memorize that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I got a little
I'm memorizing
earpiece
it right now.
I got an earpiece.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
I don't have mine in. I'm just going off of memorization.
Yeah, because you the shit, dog.
I was up till like as late as you. You were up late. You were up late.
4 o'clock. Yeah.
4 o'clock. Mm-hmm. As the crow flies, you were up till 4 o'clock.
Till 4 o'clock.
That doesn't work, but
yeah, just I was taking a deep dive into my finances and moving money here, moving money there, and
moving money everywhere.
What's awesome, man, is Apple savings account. It pays 4.15%.
Whoa.
Yeah, so you can literally just have money sitting in there, and that's it's one of the best.
It is.
Interest rates you can get with a savings account. So
I got some high interest savings account with Chase, but I'm looking for other ones, so maybe I'll check that out.
Yeah, it's a good one. And then also they have even their credit card, man. They have great cash back, all sorts of stuff. It's pretty awesome.
Where's Steve Jobs? Is he here?
He's here in spirit.
Who paid you to say that?
I'm an Apple guy,
I know you're an Apple guy. I'm a Samsung guy. Guess who makes the displays for Apple?
Samsung?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Everyone's dogging on it. It's all the same in the end of the day. I was actually talking to Matt Hobson about that.
Yeah.
And he's like, once you start understanding the basics of tech, and especially him, because he knows the depths of it, right? Yeah, you just start realizing it's all the same.
Does he have an Apple or a Samsung?
I can't remember what he
Android
has, but he's not partial to either. He just uses what he uses.
He's a savant, man.
He's a G.
Dude, a G. Yes.
He's a G unit.
G-unit.
G-unitness. Yeah, dude, he's a genius.
Well, it's so funny, man. And you can break up random conversations, and then all of a sudden he's just so happens to be an expert in it. And
I know. He knows a lot. Jack of all. Well, he says he openly admits he's a jack of all trade, master of none kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But his I guess his level of mastery is a different level of other things, because the in-depth conversations I've had with him about this and that, you would, from the layman, it would seem as though he's the master. He's pretty good, man.
Dude, yeah, he knows his shit, though.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, let's chat cigars real quick. We'll light up.
Let's do it.
So Jared, I think you can hold that up to the camera. Jared's just smoking a classic Oliva O series. That seems to be your go-to.
Yeah.
Right? You've had those a lot over here.
Mm-hmm. I like them.
Yeah. I'm using going to be smoking a brand from my padre, mi padre,
the
dad cigar. This is the La Promesa. It's good. I have actually never had this one, but this series of cigars is amazing. So, just to give you guys a little cigar tip here, but you can always tell if a cigar is fresh if you just give it a little squeeze. Right? You want that tobacco to be moist, to be somewhat humid. So sometimes if a cigar is too dry, I'll put it in my humidor for a couple weeks.
Humidor.
And yeah, you want to make sure that's nice and smushy a little bit, so I could feel the humidity there. Also, behind the sticker is also important. Make sure you squeeze behind that. You shouldn't hear any cracking, or if the actual wrapper, the tobacco leaf wrapper that's holding it together, if it starts cracking, that needs to go back in the humidor. Yeah, and we have a wonderful neighbor that's doing their weed whacking. Maybe we should do this Saturday. We do this Saturday morning. This is Saturday morning today. Mm-hmm. And so it seems to be the day to do your yard work. And we are in a garage.
Like the day, yeah.
Yeah. So just enjoy the organic sounds of Saturday morning in a suburb as we light these cigars. Santa Clara. Dude, we have a lot of Hispanic-sounding names going on.
We do.
Humidor, Mi Padre, Santa Clara. Oliva. Yeah, I mean, we are smoking cigars. So.
Yeah.
But I'm going to light up. I actually got a soft flame today. A little Zippo lighter. So with soft flame, it just takes a little bit longer.
Will you explain the difference between soft and...
Oh, great. Yeah, Mal's reminded me over there. Our producer, Mallory, thank you, by the way, my lovely wife.
I thought that was the voice of God.
It is, the voice of at least an angel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like, straight milk.
This is straight milk. But yeah, so Jared, he's using a harsh flame or a hard flame, which is a torch, butane. Gives off that blue flame. It'll light up real good, but you just got to be careful with it. So he's doing it nice and tender like. Looks good. So soft flame, obviously it's this. I'm just going to be toasting this tobacco a little bit longer. Just making that dance up there. And I'll shut up so you can just hear the sounds. Yeah, you can see how that soft flame is just dancing up there, kind of grabbing the cigar. Takes a second longer, but it usually gives you a good first puff. And you can get a great first puff with a hard or soft flame. Some people are a little bit more snobbish about it. Another method for soft flame that is even purer, I think, is the long matches. You've seen those before, Jared, haven't you?
Yep. Some people only use the long match.
The long mash. The long mash.
It's the long mash. You seen that guy on Instagram? He's like sticks his tongue out. He's like, yeah, he long mashed
with his mustache. Do you know it's a filter that makes him bald? He actually has hair.
Does he?
Yeah, if you watch closely, you'll see the filter. And he's like, sometimes I like to be on the beach with my family, like that guy.
Yeah.
So, sometimes I use a soft flame to light my cigars.
You guys stick your tongue out.
It's so romantic. Barcelona. That's like the Spanish.
Yeah.
Yeah. No Mexicano.
Barcelona.
See, that's a perfect little cherry there. I'm just taking my time here.
Yeah, and instead of like a S sound, they do a TH sound with proper like Castilian Spanish.
Yeah, Castilian, that's the word.
Yeah, but Grandpa actually spoke fluent Castilian Spanish, and he would teach like Hispanic ladies how to like read and write in English so they could do better in like the workforce and stuff.
Oh, cool.
But they would always make fun of him because he spoke proper Castilian Spanish.
It does sound a little funny though when you hear somebody speaking with a lisp on purpose.
Yep. Mm. Well, and I guess it was like I think there was like I don't know. I'm not the greatest with history, but it was like a prominent person, I think like a king or something. He just so happened to have a lisp, and so people kind of associated it with like, royalty or whatever, and so it became like
that's kind of the history of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it came from.
Yeah,
like
speech impediment.
One guy's speech impediment. Like, cultivated the entire culture for the name.
Maybe wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
Imagine like Mike Tyson becoming president.
Oh yeah,
and then like the generation, like years later, they pick it up. Like,
and he's got like the two pigeons. He's like, Kith.
Just a dialect. This is just a dialect. I've had it with South Korea. I've had it with North Korean dictatorships. This is unacceptable. what was that video we were watching on our sales team? So here's a quick story. I think I kind of made Jefferson a little mad that day because I turned the whole serious like motivational video into like a comedy show. So, but yeah, we were watching a Mike Tyson video, and it's all serious, and it's like it's actually really motivating. You know, we're like yeah, we're like yeah, I feel it. And then he starts talking. He's like, I see him when he enters the ring, and I see him there, and I'm looking straight in his eyes, and I see him, and I'm looking, I'm waiting for the chink in his armor. And I spot the chink in his armor, and now I know I'm going to win him. We were just busting up laughing, dude. I couldn't stop laughing the whole time.
In all seriousness. But yeah, man, it's actually amazing to like hear Mike Tyson talk if you put the, the voice aside. He's super articulate.
Oh,
and
yeah, dude. His podcast is
extremely
really
well read. And it's really impressive to hear him talk about just like little nuggets he has on life and stuff.
Yeah. I've actually been enjoying I haven't watched a full episode yet, but his clips are out there on the internet, you know?
Yeah.
And I'll probably queue one up today, actually.
In the interwebs.
The interwebs.
That's right, dog.
Dude, I think a big part of running a podcast is listening to other people's podcasts as well. Have you noticed that, Mal? It's huge. Yeah. See. How's that Oliva treating you?
It's nice, man.
Yeah.
Nice and smooth.
It is.
And I like it's a little bit smaller cigar,
It's a quicker smoke, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I haven't even got like a 1/4 inch on this burn yet. This is going to take me a while.
But yeah, so authentic identity. We're playing around with different names, and we feel like that's the one to land on. And really, again, what this podcast is about is just really finding out who your true self is, what makes you tick, like really what you need. Because in America, it's a great opportunity. We have so many opportunities, but also part of the culture is really just kind of a disconnectedness, and that you just grind and you grind and you grind and you grind. And that's all good and well. That's how you get ahead in life. And we're so blessed to have the opportunity to be able to put your, nose to the grindstone. And, in a matter of years, even for me, in a matter of months, I was able to change the course of my entire life based off of not taking it like no for an answer. And, during that time, I found that, you don't find the time. If you try to find the time, you're not going to find it. There's always going to be a reason, but you got to make the time. So
100%.
Whether it's you get creative with how you do stuff, because if you commit to a certain level of activity, sometimes you got to get a little creative to make it happen, meaning that, you got to multitask. So I would be, say, running, but also like listening to the script that I was learning for my sales process, or like doing push-ups as I was reading, and just any which way that I could, even if spending time with my kids, okay, let's go to the pool and I'll tread water for an hour, So being able to do two things at once creatively, that really allowed me to jump ahead and jump ahead and jump ahead within a 3-month time frame, man. It was like my financial outlook, who I was as a person. I mean, it all freaking changed quick.
Yeah, and what's cool about that is like to claim that if I was to claim that I'm authentically me, but I don't go push myself, or I haven't ever pushed myself, or I haven't ever taken the time to do self-help or work on myself, that's not your authentic self. Authentic self doesn't mean, or your authentic identity doesn't mean like you're just done growing. You found it, right? It's always evolving. And you have to dive deep and work on yourself to find out even who the fuck you are. Mm-hmm. Right. So you don't understand that until you go push yourself, until you commit yourself to being better at a craft or being better at something. Then you start finding out who you are. Mm-hmm. And even if you do something you don't want to do, that doesn't resonate with you, and you push through it, you still learn parts of yourself. And that's the important thing that I think we've discussed already. But it's all coming together now in that name, authentic identity.
And to kind of piggyback off of what we were just saying, it's like, you know, you can really put your nose to the grindstone and make a lot happen quickly. However, when sometimes getting super hyper focused on goals, which is a fucking phenomenal thing to do, at the same time, you know, maybe you do put some of the things aside, like your, you know, your personal well-being and the things that like really help you get into like a Zen mode. You know, for me, for example, it's drawing. I love to draw. However, I got way far away from it because I'm a super attention to detailed person. And I feel like that's a big part of why I was able to be a good artist, is because I could see how things line up and, you know, proportionate to each other and things like this. That was just a natural ability that I had. But with the responsibilities of life and, you know, having 3 children within 40 months, it's really hard to put that attention to detail and get hyper focused on any one thing, because if I get super hyper focused, all of a sudden someone's choking in the other room. Yeah, you know. So
I think you had to. Yeah, let's say you have a limited amount of focus, right? And your priorities change when you have kids, especially. Probably I don't have kids yet, but I could imagine that.
Well, you got them doggies running around, and they're pretty close to having kids.
Yeah, well, having a dog is like having a permanent 5-year-old, but they're a little less maintenance than a kid, I think. But
yeah, I would agree. I'd had dogs my whole life until I had kids, and yeah,
that holds true. Then that's a pretty good statement.
Yeah, but yeah, kids are definitely they're a lot, but you know, I would never ever regret having them because they are just amazing. And you know, especially to see them grow and be able to teach them and spend time with them and, you know, see the world through their eyes, you know, allow them to experience things for the first time, like, you know, first time they saw the ocean or anything like this, and just the excitement that they have. It's like,
yeah, you kind of relive it.
Yeah, you kind of relive it. Yeah, it's super awesome. But, you know, and that's why, like I said, you have to make time, because I feel like I didn't do that back then. It was really just like, okay, responsibility. And, you know, I kicked myself forever because I wasn't getting into, because like fitness was a huge part of who I was for a very long time. And, you know, it was like I would just kick myself because I wasn't honoring myself and my health and my well-being, you know, and I was really young. And it was just like, I didn't understand what it took to kind of manage all that and to actually make the time, whether that's getting up early or whatever it is. You know, a good time to really focus on yourself and what you need, especially in an adult world where everything's just kind of pulling you every direction. Get up early enough to where the world's still quiet, people are still sleeping, and you can take that time to really develop, you know, what it is, whether it's, I know that you're a big, like, you write a lot, you journal all the time, you know. So, you know, taking that time to express yourself, to be creative, to put your thoughts in order, whatever it is, it's like, that's not something you find the time for. You got to make the time for it.
Yep. And
I guess part of what this podcast is, you know, us as adults with, again, the responsibilities of the world. It's like, okay, well, you know, everything wants a piece of me, but how do I still retain a large enough piece for myself that I have what I need for my personal well-being, for my, you know, mental health or whatever it is. And, you know, there's things where you can be, you know, they have meditation, they have breathing exercises. Those things work great. But I really like what kind of Joe Rogan's philosophy is. He finds hobbies that he can get so deep dive into, like say archery, for example, that it kind of shuts out the world in a similar way, to where you get so hyper focused on this one thing that, you know, all these other signals come in and everything, it just kind of blocks it. And then you can just get hyper focused, and it's like a meditative experience.
It is, yeah.
You know,
that's how almost every hobby I have is the same way. Even these cigars, right? It's a way for me to slow down. It forces me to slow down, enjoy something that's handcrafted, and focus on a conversation with somebody, or even if I'm just alone, like I'm just in my thoughts or listening to a book or something where I'm just focusing on the taste of this, and it's amazing. But that's every hobby you see behind me. You know, same thing with firearms, with anything really, writing especially. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that a lot of that came from my mom a little bit. She was an English major, so she was always just encouraging me to read.
I have this journal that I should probably, because there's some pages in the back of it, probably put in some updated stuff, but it's a journal from when I was in 6th grade. And so I found it when I think I was about 21, and then I input a bunch of stuff that I was going through at that point. And then I found it again when I was about 28 or so, or maybe, no, I think I was 33, and I input some more stuff. So it's like, it's just a really interesting little journal because
it's like a time capsule.
Yeah, it's like a time capsule because it takes a deep dive into, like, you know, the child version of myself, and within a few pages later, it's like the young adult version of myself, and then a few pages later, it goes to like the, you know, the early 30s version of myself. So it's probably high time I get back in there and input some stuff, because I've probably changed the most in the last 3 years than anything.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, you and I both, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's been awesome ride, kind of enjoying that.
Yeah.
With the crew and with everybody at JKR Windows, and just a good group of dudes.
Mm-hmm.
Good crew. We're all gonna die together. Have you seen that meme? There's a good group of guys. It's John C. Reilly, actually.
Oh, is it?
There's a good group of guys. We're all gonna die together.
I love that portrait you have when you walk in your house. First
yeah.
thing you see is a portrait of John C. Reilly up there. And he's got the glasses on.
Dude, that's speaking of authenticity, or like your authentic identity. I just love humor, man. Like, I don't know. There's something that just, I've always liked to laugh or goof off, but there was something that clicked with me in like high school, and it was just like, man, none of this shit matters. It's like my grades don't fucking matter. Like, I think I was on to the education system at a young age, just being like, this is a load of shit. Yeah, because I was so eager to learn when I was younger. I was like growing up, I read everything. I think, that's what we were, because last episode we went through your early life, and then we were going to do that. I forgot.
Yeah.
I thought we were just kind of shooting in the dark today, but no.
Yeah. So if we could segue into that, you know, I was a large focus of that last one. And if I'm being honest, like, you know, everybody's favorite topic of a conversation is themselves. At the same time, it did feel kind of weird for me afterwards, because I was like, man, I just talked about myself a lot.
Oh, I was interviewing you too.
But yeah, the idea of it was just to kind of start laying some of the groundwork of, like, you know, who we are, where we came from. And then as we kind of progress through this podcast, then to get an understanding of, you know, where we came from, who we've become, and who we are becoming.
Yeah, and where we want to go. Exactly. So, yeah, on that note, I guess when I was younger, but I just kind of felt like the education system was failing me. I didn't quite put it into words like that when I was a kid, but I came out the gate super eager to learn. I knew everything as a kid. I was like, I always had the answer in every class, you know. I was that annoying kid. But I was moving faster than what the curriculum could give me, and so I got super bored in like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. I just started getting more and more bored.
And then starting to get in a little bit of trouble.
Getting into trouble, but then I would, you know, throw out these witty little quips and be the class clown and make everybody giggle or snarky or whatever.
Yeah, that's my youngest son. He's
like that.
I mean, he was 13 months old, and he's just started talking. And the concepts and things he was putting together when he was like a year and a half old was like what a 7-year-old would do. And I'm like, what is going on with this kid?
Yeah.
And, you know, don't get me wrong, he's still very much a little boy, but at the same time, he's basically top 1 and 2 in every like category in his class. And he gets super bored because he learns it all quick. And he's a funny little guy. I mean, when he was 4 years old, he would give people nicknames and stuff, and just the funniest nickname you could give someone. And like full grown adults, man.
Like he's a clever guy.
He's just a clever little dude, man. And so, you know, it does show up in him getting kind of bored because, okay, I got it. Now what? How can I entertain myself? Well, let's be funny.
Yeah, I just remember like in 4th grade, I was like fed up with homework. I'm like, this is a joke. This is stupid. Like, what a waste of my time. which is totally, if you look into the education system, it's such a, like, make them bring home the tedium, so it encroaches on every other aspect of their life. They have to like go do an assignment. We now know, right? The education system is just meant to make good employees, people that just do what they're told, obedience. So if I was to sum it up into one term, my whole early upbringing was like all about just obeying. It was like never encouraged to find anything out about yourself. Just do what other people fucking tell you to do, Blake. Just calm down, Blake. Stop making noises, Blake. Stop being energetic, Blake. Stop being too excited about life, because you're only here to do what other people want you to fucking do. That was my whole upbringing, you know? And then, but for the audience, I grew up very staunch Mormon, LDS. And I was a good little Mormon boy, but man, I wanted to rebel so bad. I never got caught doing anything bad. Yeah, I didn't do anything heinous though. You know, in my young age, I wasn't out, doing drugs or anything like that. But compared to your upbringing, right? I had a great family. I still do. They're great. They're awesome. I had excellent parents that were heavily involved in my life, probably to a detriment, I think.
Yep.
And what's interesting about Jared and I is we've ended up in very, very similar trains of thought and very similar like goals and ambitions and attributes for leadership and other things like that. But we're still completely different people, and we've butted heads a lot as well, but we still can recognize where we're similar. And that's why I think we're still friends. We're homies for life. We're doing a podcast. But we've come to these conclusions in such different ways. And I was talking to Jeff Fieldstead about that too, just the complete and utter polarity between him and Brandon Neal.
Yeah.
Because Brandon Neal grew up kind of like I did in a very religious family. And Jeff, he grew up on the streets like you, And so that's the kind of the same thing that you and I have, where I grew up in a very rigid, structured family. And basically, if I'm being honest, like I think the LDS religion is great. The gospel that they teach is a great message, but I think the culture is a cult. Yeah, and we can dive in. It's a cult. It's a culture. It's kind of part of the name, actually.
It's a cult, sure.
Yeah, I wonder how that would pan out if we looked into the derivative of like Latin and stuff, cult and culture. They're probably all related, but
in a lot of things, the way they do stuff, it's like derived from like Masonic rituals. And it was really cool, man. So my grandpa was a Mason, and when he passed away at his funeral, the Masons actually put on his funeral.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so they were
walking around with aprons and stuff.
Yeah, they were full Masonic like hats and like robes and like freaking whatever they held around their neck. Yeah. And it was interesting, man. I didn't even know that he was a Mason.
Until then,
yeah. I didn't even know, and I'm like, who are these guys? And
how old were you when you?
I think 19.
Oh, okay. So you were kind of like, you knew enough to be like,
I knew what Masons were. I just didn't know he was a Mason.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's cool.
He and I, we never really had any sort of real conversations. And which is funny because my mom to this day, like when we're talking, she's like, oh my God, you sounded just like my dad right there. Just the way like I process stuff and articulate stuff is very similar. However, growing up, he didn't really see that in me. And I really like wasn't that way. I was more just kind of like, I don't know what the term would be, but just kind of a little free spirit, didn't have a lot of direction or guidance. And so I think he just kind of put me in the, my dad, I love him, and he did teach me some extremely important aspects of I carry on to this day in terms of having respect for one and a hard work ethic for two.
And before I throw my parents under the bus too much, I gotta talk about those core values, right? Like honesty was taught in my home, and I'm the oldest of 5 kids, so I'm the oldest, and I'm also the oldest grandkid on both sides. So when you talk about the tip of the spear within this family legacy, right? there was just a ton of pressure instilled on me as I grew older and started understanding what was going on. I was meant to be the example for my family and my siblings, but every single cousin, and I have about 5,000 of those fuckers, like they're out there. But I don't know, I was just immensely drilled into my head. But yeah, you know, being punctual, being on time, being clean, work ethic. I remember my dad just, you know, rallying us every Saturday to do some project in the yard or do whatever, go do a lot of service. Excellent people. I grew up, well, I'm not going to say excellent. I grew up around really good people. A very good community in Linden, Utah. Linden 11th Ward, if you hear this, what up, everybody? You're not going to like me by the end of this podcast, but really good people that taught me great morals and values. And so being trustworthy and then living like the Scout's creed, you know, a Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, brave, thrifty, clean, and reverent or something. I got them mixed up at the end. There's a lot of them. But those like ethos and morals to cling on to were very, very pushed and very encouraged in my home. So I have to tip my hat to those people that helped raise me and my family. But yeah, man, I kind of resent my upbringing because I had everything I could ever, I knew we were kind of poor, but we were middle class poor. So it wasn't ever uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, and
I was poor.
Yeah. Shout out to my dad for busting his ass and having a great job. And my mom being a stay at home, like a homemaker. That's a lot of work too. And she did great. Like we always had family dinner. We had family meals, like at least 2 or 3, 4 times a week. At least once a week too, when we all got into high school and we were doing different extracurricular stuff. But so I had a great childhood, great upbringing. But if you look at it closer, now that I'm older and I've unpacked a lot of stuff, all of that comfort was actually disguised as a form of oppression in my life. So I was expected from a young age to be in line, be obedient, and never embarrass my parents or never do anything that would break my responsibility of being the example for everyone, of all my siblings and my cousins. And as I got more cousins, the pressure was there. So I started growing up and just the immense pressure to like, you know, being a young Mormon kid. It's like never masturbate, never have urges, never do drugs, never do these things. If you do, like, you're going to hell. Be perfect, yeah. And so if you're not, you know, and like most Mormon dudes, like I struggled with, you know, being attracted to girls, like, and then growing up with the internet, like it's everywhere, you know. You want to see titties? All you got to do is know how to type on a keyboard.
Titties.
Yeah, yeah. Not even that yet, right? This was pre-phones.
Yeah.
So titties and
titties.
You know, you just turn on MTV and you're a 12-year-old kid with a raging boner, like, "Mah!" Yeah. And so my family tried to keep us so safe from that it actually backfired. I think that happens to a lot of LDS families.
Yeah. Well, there's you know, enough pressure. It's got to come out somewhere.
Yeah.
You know,
it does. Yeah. It's got
blowback.
It's got to come out somewhere. So, so that was my vice. Still is to this day, is just, you know, I like me an attractive lady. It's awesome being married. I love it. And I got a beautiful wife who's sitting here in this room, and she's awesome. And it's just, I don't know. I grew up thinking I was a piece of shit all the time. I was a piece of shit. I wasn't good enough. Also, my mom being an English teacher, like they held me to very high standards. Like I needed to get A's and B's, but I was like a B and C student, just because I didn't want to try.
Yeah,
like I already knew it. Like I could come in, I could do a whole semester's worth of like not do any single homework, not do anything, and then the day before the test, I would maybe just read the textbook and do a couple problems. And then I'd come in through not do any math homework and then on the test, I'd come in and get an A or B. And my teacher thought I was cheating. Yeah, it was Mr. Sanderson at Pleasant Grove High School. Shout out to him.
Shout
if
out,
he's still
Mr.
around.
Sanderson. Thank you.
But he was
cheated.
cool. He called me and thought I was cheating one time, and so I had to do some math problems in front of him to prove it. And then what was cool is kind of like your experience where, he just gave me passing grades on all the homework that I hadn't done because he saw that I could do that. Like that was probably one of the best experiences I had in high school was a teacher realizing that I learned different and just allowing me to be me. Mm-hmm. Like that means a lot to me.
Yeah.
And that hardly ever happens.
Those are, very few and far between.
Mm-hmm. So my whole younger life was just like people trying to make me conform all the time. Conform. Oh, you're not good enough, Blake. Oh, you get aroused and you touched your pee-pee? Yo, you're bad. You're bad.
Yeah.
You're guilty. You're going to hell. You're going to sin. Like everything I did was bad all the time. I was grounded all the time because I didn't get good enough grades because I wasn't perfect enough. So I would be when I say grounded, I mean like literally fucking grounded.
Like they'd make them lay down on the ground.
Pretty much. I was confined to quarters. It's like military law. One time I was reading the military law, the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And like I was basically confined to quarters on like bread and water rations. Not really, but that's just what I ate growing up was like toast, Oh yeah. Toast and cereal. And then other than our dinner meals, but I was grounded for 3, 4, 5 months at a time. And I had the power to unground myself, but I had to conform.
Yep.
I had to go get all my assignments in. I had to get A's and B's, and then I was ungrounded. My family had the money to get me a piece of junk car when I was 16, but I couldn't drive until I got my Eagle Scout. So I didn't get my driver's license till I was almost 18.
Yeah, I went to high school with a kid like that.
Yep. But meanwhile, my siblings weren't held to the same standards. So they would slack the standards. My brother, Trevor, he started driving right at 16. So I think I drove for like maybe 4 months before my brother caught up to me. We're 2 years apart. But just stupid stuff that like just prohibited. I had no social life in high school outside of school. So when I got to school, I wanted to be in the most social situations I could possibly be in. So if a group of my friends, if they were skipping class to go hang out, I was there. And I had multiple groups of friends. Mm-hmm. So there's
period, lots of opportunities.
Like, hey, we're skipping gym. I'm like, sweet. I'd come back in, and then I'd bump into another group of friends. They're like, hey, we're skipping third period. So I basically would go to school to skip school. Mm-hmm. It was great. And then I'd go home and I'd continue to be grounded. And I just had this stack of homework piling up. And I'm just like, no, because you're telling me to do it. I'm not going to do it. That was kind of like my mentality. I didn't really know I was putting it into words like that, but I had no ownership of anything. I was the oldest son. I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. Couldn't do anything. So sophomore, junior year, senior year, like I was just grounded all the time. Couldn't even go to Mutual. My family started finding out, my parents started finding out what does Blake enjoy? Let's take that away from him so this kid fucking learns to conform. They just like beat me down like figuratively with this like metaphoric bat, just like stay down.
Which was the exact opposite of what you actually needed,
Exactly.
Yeah, man, it's interesting, especially like, for us to be, excuse me, obviously we're very much different individuals, but aligned on a lot of things. But just a huge juxtaposition of our upbringings.
Yeah, you were highly independent.
Yeah.
And I was highly dependent because all of my validation and self-worth was also tied up in other people's thoughts. So I wanted to impress my dad. I wanted him to be proud. I wanted my uncles to be proud of me. I wanted everybody in my life. And so I played the game. So if they needed me to be spiritual, I would be spiritual. If they needed me to speak in church, I would give a talk in church. And I love reading. I love creative writing. I love fantasy stories. I love science fiction. I just like good story. Mm-hmm. I actually like a lot of parts of the Bible and the Book of Mormon. I think they're awesome. and stuff like that. I just like learning about that. So I've always been able to articulate well and do accents and be funny and chase. I learned the tools I needed to get the validation I needed as well. So all of that, through elementary, junior high, and anyway, like I don't think I needed anything in high school other than the social aspect of it. I don't remember learning anything of value except this kind of stuff. Right? I was in an audio video class with Russ Mayo from Pleasant Grove High School, Mr. Mayo. He's still kicking it. I got to shout him out. We'll probably clip this and put his name all over the internet, but he's a dope guy, super creative.
So is he the teacher in that?
Yeah, he's the teacher. He's been running that program. It's like one of the best high school audio video programs in the state. And they have, I think there's some other schools that do it, but Pleasant Grove High is one of the best radio programs too. They have their own radio station. And they've just been kicking ass because of him. And so that's the only thing I learned of value in high school was those skills. And that's led to this as well and helped with Mallory's audio skills and her knowledge is just combined this. And now we're podcasting in every single room in our house, it's a different studio.
Yep.
So it's been kind of cool that way, but sorry, I got to nurse this.
So yeah, I know we've discussed in previous podcasts, like, you getting into the military, and that was like, something that you did for yourself.
Yeah.
That was against, all the pressures, all the expectations, all the demanding of perfectionism. It was something that you could own yourself, a decision that you had made for yourself. And thank you for your service, by the way.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. But yeah, it's really interesting to, again, hear like where you've come from and just, again, like the juxtaposition because, say, for example, you were the oldest of the siblings and the cousins, and I was actually the youngest of all the siblings and the cousins. Yeah. So I was like the little kid being dismissed all the time, and hey, it looks weird when you're trying to hang out with us because you're a whole head shorter than us, and like, kind of the butt of the jokes a lot for a while. And
so you were kind of dismissed a lot.
Yeah, I was dismissed a lot for sure.
And I was under a magnifying glass everywhere I went, all the time. So like if my parents saw me like holding hands with a girl on the way home from junior high, which actually happened, like somebody told us that you were holding hands with Kayla Bruning on the way home from school, and like I got like a 3-hour lecture about how holding hands could lead to me like...
You're such a deviant.
Yeah, bro. Like, man, I had no reference, because I'm the oldest kid. So I'd go hang out with some other older guys, and some older dudes that were like on my sports teams or whatever. And like I was new to everything, like I didn't have an older brother tell me what this means and what that means. And,
I had my older cousins.
Yeah.
I remember when I moved to Utah when I was 7, my 2 older cousins lived here, and they kind of gave me a crash course on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
On
the birds and the bees.
Birds and the bees. They had me, had me smoking cigarettes in the backyard, 7 years old, like just a bunch of stupid stuff. They taught me how to steal. Yeah. So, I remember, their dad's girlfriend, she would take us to the store, and every time she'd make us empty our pockets when we were done. Yeah. Just a lot of funny stuff, but, they were really like influential in terms of me kind of taking some, not making the best decisions.
Right.
But, in retrospect, I definitely wouldn't take anything back. I'm glad that I came from where I came from and experienced the things that I've experienced. But yeah, so... I don't know. What else should we talk about?
Yeah, I guess there was a lot of good things too about my youth. It forced me to have a little bit of a backbone for myself. I started saying no more, and it was in my senior year. I started like literally giving the bird to my parents, telling them to fuck off, like to their face. Like I was fed up, and I was still a good kid, but I'd come home and I'd like try to do all my assignments. I'd like, okay, I'm finally going to get my life in order here. I'm finally going to get ahead of things. And I'd be cruising. Like I'd be doing all this makeup homework. I'm cracking through it. And then my mom would like I'd be going for like 2 or 3 hours. And then my mom would get off the phone or like do whatever finish up whatever she was doing. And she'd come downstairs and she'd be like, Blake, are you home? I'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm here. And she'd be like, do your homework. So as soon, close the book, fucking pack it up. Nope, no more. Because as soon as I did that, it now became her victory. Mm-hmm. It became my parents' victory. It became my dad's victory. So I literally owned, like, there was nothing in my life that I like owned other than my actions like on a sports field. That's where I felt like, I played lacrosse. And I was all-state midfielder like 2 years in a row. And my third year, I had the best face-off stats in the state for like 3 or 4 years, but they only gave me the award twice so they could make other kids feel good too, which is the onset of like this pussification of all these fucking dildos of dudes, like participation trophies. Mm-hmm. Nothing against the guy. I think he was great, but they gave the all-state face-off award to this black kid. And we played against him. He's an excellent athlete. He was awesome, but my stats were far superior than his. And I kind of felt like he got it just because of his skin color. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's stupid. Like, so my senior year, I don't think I had anything because I had won sophomore and junior. It was just dumb. Yeah. But I actually got offered to play. I didn't have a scholarship or anything, but I went to a lacrosse camp at BYU with Coach Jason Lamb and his crew. They won a couple national titles at the club level. It's a big deal. And then all my friends that I played with, that did go to BYU, they went on to win some championships and stuff. But I felt so strongly about joining the military because it was something I could own, right? And I've always had these heebie-jeebies. I grew up in the shadow of BYU, Brigham Young University. I grew up in Linden and Orem and Pleasant Grove. And that's right in the shadow of Provo. Mm-hmm. And that school has always just given me the heebie-jeebies. I don't know why. It just seems like that's where you go to show that you're top level of conformity. You're like, I am so much more Mormon than anybody now. Oh, I'm going to BYU? Yeah, I'm more Mormon than anybody. Like, oh, I'm more Mormon than you. And then they have Utah Valley State College or whatever, UVSC. It's now UVU. And that was kind of like, oh, you go to UVU? I'm a cougar. I hate that. Oh, fuck, I hate that. I hate BYU. They don't even have good football anymore. Like, they suck at shit. So, anyway,
it was interesting growing up in St. George because, there would be fans and stuff, but it was not this kind of
like
overarching
I think
part of the culture. It was just there was like people that liked it.
Yeah, any kind of school with any prestige, like even U of U, mm-hmm. or like, you go back to Alabama or Texas A&M, I'm sure it's the same in these like microcosms if you live locally close to those schools. I feel like you're kind of like in the shadow of it. And so that's what I was with BYU. And so I got offered to play, but I had just signed a contract. I had my mom go down and sign with me. That's how eager I was to get into the military. So I joined the Marine Corps at age 17 with parental consent. So I still had to finish my senior year, and get a high school diploma to go in. And so, but that summer I went to a lacrosse camp, and I'm talking shit on my parents, but they had the money to put us in sports and push things. But my family's not like a really health conscious. They're not serious athletes. They just, if I could dissect it, I think my parents and my family, they just like chasing the prestige that's associated with like being on a varsity team. Mm-hmm. Like, it's so petty.
Yeah. Just so they could say, oh, Blake is a varsity letterman.
And so all of me and my siblings, like, we all started varsity lacrosse, and my mom was a big part of the program with another couple families and ladies in our ward. They kind of pushed Pleasant Grove lacrosse to be what it is today. Mm-hmm. And it's a good program, but now it's all school sanctioned. But anyway, that's here nor there. But that's kind of like, that's all it was about. It wasn't about being in good shape. It wasn't about like, even it was just like be in the prestigious position. That's all it was.
So they can have something that they're proud about to when people ask, well, how's Blake doing? Oh yeah, like
So at the family reunion, they can brag about me, and that there's more to it than that. But like just the fact that that's a part of it says a lot. And I'm sure my siblings will want to argue me on that, or like whoever, but. That's from my perspective, what I see with hindsight now. I'm like, well, it probably wasn't the best, but.
And, perception's reality. And if that's how you perceived it, that's what was real to you.
Exactly.
Especially, going through life and maturing into, are you 34 now?
Yep, 34.
34? A lot of things have come, just at least from my perspective, a lot more clear as I've aged and matured.
Yeah, with time, things come full circle. And I think when you approach your 30s, more things have come full circle than at any point in your life. And that continues, as you age.
Yeah,
I would
for
imagine
sure.
more and more things come full circle and your perspective changes. But
So, and I know just based off conversations I've had with you that, at least some of these things like you've brought up to your parents. So, I mean, what feedback are they still like kind of the same way about that stuff, or do they agree that maybe they zigged when they should have zagged with you with certain things, or they double down on it, or how does that go?
well, here's the thing. Like, I'm an abrasive person when I talk.
Really?
Like, yeah. You wouldn't know, right? And
Yeah.
It's so subtle about it. But I'm pretty abrasive, and so the conversations I have about this stuff, it's never on their own. Like, they never want it.
Yeah.
I force them into these conversations, and so
they almost feel like they got to be defensive.
they're defensive, and I've slackened off a lot. But some topics I still can't. I don't know. I can't stand for that. Like I'm very, very strongly of the mindset like I'm in charge of my life, right? If I'm a big thing in the Mormon belief is that you're God's son or daughter, right? You're a child of God. And then they turn around and they act like incapable sheep, because that's the analogy, The good shepherd is Jesus, and just go be a good sheep and do what the shepherd tells you, and then you'll be saved, right? That's almost any Christian religion says something to that effect. But they also sprinkle in there the fact that you can become a god because you're God's son or daughter. You're anointed.
Have your own planet,
and eventually you'll rise to a level of spirituality where you can basically live with God in his kingdom after this life and go create your own worlds and basically progress, which I don't have a problem with. I like that there's progression, because like if there wasn't progression, then we'd just come down here and we'd pass the test and we'd go sit on a cloud with God and just play the harp forever. That doesn't appeal to me. And like, that's not the belief. The belief is that you can go, live with God and progress.
That's an interesting perspective.
Then they choose to be a sheep. And it's like, no, if you're God's son, you're not a fucking sheep. Like, you're anointed to become like him. So why not act like that in this life? Why not take charge? Why not make some decisions for yourself? Like, I chose to break the mold of Utah County Mormonism. And I still appeased people. I still put my military career on hold. I joined the military first. I got paperwork for a religious deferment for 2 years. And I went and served a mission for the God I believed in at that time. But also, that was probably about 30% of it was my belief. The other 70%, now that hindsight's available, I was doing it for validation from my culture, from my family, validation from a future girl that I could possibly marry, and then her parents, and like everything. It was terrifying. If I didn't go on this mission, I wouldn't have any clout. I wouldn't have any respect within this culture, this community I loved, and I wouldn't be able to like get a wife or hold a calling or be a bishop or whatever. I don't know what my mom thought.
I wonder what percentage of the motivation of people that actually go on missions would be due to the fact of them looking for eligibility to find a wife.
That's huge. For anyone that's grown up Mormon, that's huge. I always respected the guys. There was one elder on my mission who was like 26. That's the oldest you can be, by the way. They might have changed that, but at the time, he was 26-year-old. He was a convert to the church, and he'd never lived in Utah. He had no idea about Utah culture. He literally was like growing up somewhere back east. I can't remember where, and got into drugs and stuff. Just was sick of life, and he found a beautiful religion to serve, and then he paid his way to go on a Mormon mission at age 26. So he's trapped with all of us little 19-year-olds. I was probably the closest one to him mentally in age because the military made me grow up real quick. So even though I was 19, he said it felt like we were companions for a little bit. He said it felt like I was like 24 or 25. It felt like I was older, but just because I think in that short time, you're being tested so hard in the Marine Corps compared to normal life that you kind of find out who you are a little bit.
You have to be mature.
And there's a lot of people that are mature that are there for the right reasons, but I'd say the majority of Mormon missionaries are pressured into it. I had companions that were like, "Oh, I'm only here so I can get a car, so my parents can pay for college." Like there's all these conditions, you know. Out of all of God's like unconditional love and everything, there's always conditions. Always conditions. So,
and for me, from an outside perspective, as I've grown older, and it's just become more and more clear to me that, and maybe I'm wrong because you do have the examples of the guy you just mentioned. He found the faith on his own. He took it on his own accord. He paid for it himself. He was, already into his mid-20s by the time he did it. So that's for the right reasons. However, in terms of like the conditional things, okay, well, I do this to get this. And it's not necessarily for the reasons that he did it for. It's so I can get the car, so I can get the wife. But as I've gotten into sales, this is just my perspective. I'm not saying it's right, but, the LDS Church being, one of the richest organizations in the entire world.
The richest religion in the world.
And, again, I'm not saying this is right, but this is a perspective that I have, especially being introduced within the sales world. It's like, okay, so you take all your young men, you teach them all these languages. You teach them how to knock doors, which is like the truest form of sales, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Being able to knock on doors.
And prospecting.
And how to talk to people and how to track numbers and how to have goals and all of this. And what better way to set up your organization for financial success than to teach all of your young men how to sell.
It's genius.
How to speak different languages. So now you're doing international business. And to me, it's like, it's a move that
it's a net positive.
It's a net positive that leads to a lot of revenue generation.
It does. So like if you look at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the LDS faith, if you look at the church, it's more like a corporation than anything. And it's brilliant. And like it's set up perfectly. Exactly. Like it's commendable. We could dive into that deeper on some other levels, but yeah, on the outside, it's like, yeah, what a great opportunity it was. And I'm still thankful for serving an LDS mission. I thought it was useful. I thought it was good. It was good chance for personal development because I chose to develop myself personally. I had two paths before me. I'm like, I could leave the military and I could come to Germany as a Mormon missionary and I could gaff off for 2 years because there was plenty of missionaries doing that. Probably the majority of the missionaries were doing that. Or I could actually, find out who I was and like learn. So I like to have a good time. There were some missionaries that walk around with a stick up their ass, and they're making sure everybody else is following the rules. And then they turn into like these Uncle Tom types that are like tattling on everybody. And like there's this level of self-righteousness. And sometimes they throw like all common sense out the window. And it's like, dude, no, that's not me. So I knew going in, like, that's not me. Like, I'm going to be consistently me. And I don't know what it was, but I never had the chance to do this growing up until I left the culture completely and joined the Marines. I went into an extremely similar culture, very, very structured, but it allowed me to be myself. And that sounds contradicting to people. You joined the military to do what you wanted. Yeah. Like I aligned with the values of the Marine Corps: honor, courage, commitment. The Marine Corps' history is beautiful. It's awesome. It's been vital to our country's success with freedom in World War II and even the founding of the country. So like it was appealing to me. And then I got there, and the regiment and being told what to do wasn't an issue, but they let me do it how I saw fit. After a while, they train you up, and then they give you command of like a squad or a fire team. I was in the infantry, so that was the billet breakdown. But once they gave me command of that, I could do things how I saw fit. I could adjust things, and I could really flex my muscles.
You could own it,
and be myself. I could own things.
Well, I think that's why it appealed to you, even though it's, you're going from one structure to another. You chose that structure. You chose it for yourself. It was nobody that applied the pressure to you. You were allowed to have like your free agency and let me choose this thing. And, that was what you needed, because at that point, it didn't seem like you had a lot of choices. Mm-hmm. So again, even though it's something that is of very much of a structure, it was at least your choice.
Yeah.
And giving you a little bit of ownership in your own life and your own choosing, that's tons of motivation.
It's huge motivation.
And
it's everything.
And I think anybody that's, I'm learning lessons from this in terms of being a parent. Anybody watching this that has children, it's all good and well to provide paths and, urging them to do certain things, just because us as parents, we need to ensure our kids have the tools necessary to get into this world and, have success at some level. But it's what that success means to them. Find out the things that they're passionate about, give them an opportunity to do different things. Don't put too much pressure on any one thing, because I met this guy one time in Las Vegas, and he was part of like the Cirque du Soleil for whatever reason. For some reason, I have a hard time saying that.
Cirque du Soleil.
And the guy, he was from, I think it was from Poland or something like that. But his parents, as like a 3-year-old, they had him on balancing boards, and they had him doing backflips. And, it was this huge pressure on him the whole time to become this acrobat. And he just resented the shit out of them for it. He did not want to do it because they pushed it, they urged it, it just became this cloud over him that he's got to live up to their expectations. And, it's one thing to provide guidance. It's another thing to provide opportunities and allow them to learn. And the more opportunities that you provide them with extracurriculars or whatever it is, that allows them to, one, get diversified, because certain skills are translatable. Say, like when I played football, all of the kids that were on the wrestling team were the most physical. The kids that played soccer or ran track, they were the fastest. The kids that played basketball, they had the best hands, and then even like baseball, there were certain things that translated as well.
Yeah.
Hand-eye coordination, things like this. But it's in an effort to where, you just allow them to, expose them to enough and really find out what it is that they want to do and allow them to make the choice. Because if they make the choice, then the sky's the limit. But
then
if you make
ownership can be there.
Ownership can be there.
Yes.
But
that's
if
the one thing
they don't make the choice, then they're not going to be into it.
Exactly.
But what's also, an interesting take on that guy that I mentioned, that was that acrobat, he had resented his family, so this is almost kind of contradictory to what I'm saying, but he had resented his parents so much until he got signed on to Cirque du Soleil.
Cirque du Soleil, dude.
So he got signed on to it when he got his first paycheck. Then he was like, then he had a lot of gratitude. He understood it,
then he was okay, cool.
But at the same time, it's like you can do things in a way to where you expose them to enough and allow them to make a choice to do that stuff, because the last thing as a parent, you don't want your kids to resent you.
Oh yeah.
And
that's what I have a lot of from my I love my mom and dad, but I don't even call them mom and dad. I call them Brad and Debbie.
That's interesting.
I just kind of resent the way I was raised. You know, and then as you get into the self-help world and stuff, and I've heard people say this, like, I think the most disenfranchised people are not poor people. I think it's the middle class. You know, like that's what everyone said. Billionaires say that. They're like the middle class people. I grew up without ever wanting anything. I knew we weren't as rich as some of my other friends, you know, because after, you know, Christmas vacation, we'd come back to school and talk about what we got for Christmas, you know, and we've all had rich friends. They're like, oh, I got this.
Oh yeah.
The new Sega Gen, you know, I got the new game console and this and that. And there were some Christmases where, you know, we did get stuff like that. As I got older, it was like, wow, you know, my dad started doing great. I commend them for that. Like, I love to see my dad doing better financially and my mom, but the middle class is just such a dangerous place to be because you just get so fucking comfortable.
Yep.
Like, I never needed to. It was never encouraged me to, like, I don't know. I never wanted to, like, go get it myself because I always had it, you know? And there's some people that have said this way more articulate than I'm saying it now, but I kind of resent the fact that I was middle class. I resent the fact that I was controlled so much. You know, I don't think I was never closer to my authentic self than I was marching in line with a bunch of other Marine recruits because that was something I chose. And like, it doesn't resonate with me to always do close order drill and march left, right. That's not who I want to be, but because I chose to do that and it was a stepping stone along the way to become a Marine, like, that's what leads you to your authentic self is you choosing the fucking thing. Not doing what other people tell you just for the sake of, oh, what will my mom and dad think if I don't do this? Or what will people think of me if I don't make this much money? Or if I make too much money? Mm-hmm. Like, I want to be humble. You know, like, that's another thing too. It's like, so I was kind of like just oppressed by the culture and by the expectations and by my parents' control and their lack of parenting skills. They seem to have gotten it right for every one of my other siblings. But for me, I just felt like I was just this rebel, dude. Like,
Well,
I'm just doing normal
you're the
shit.
guinea pig of becoming a
guinea pig.
parent, man.
But I felt like I was such a
How old
horrible
were your
person.
parents when they had you?
I think my dad was like 26. My mom was like 21 or 22.
Yep.
So they were pretty young.
Yeah, that's you learn a lot from the first to the second to the third.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine having a child now that I've raised. My oldest is 12. I have a 10 and an 8-year-old that I had in my 20s, and I can only imagine how much better of a parent that I would be for, say, like if I were to have another kid.
Yeah.
Just based off all the experience I have, you know, and I got all these baby skills, like
Diapers.
stuff that I forgot about, but, you know, I was very much hands-on, diapers and getting up late and all of that, you know. So I have all these skill sets to be a parent, but when I became a parent, I was far from ready.
Yeah.
You know, and it's something, it's interesting that, you know, the topic of this podcast is, you know, finding your authentic self. And I actually had the conversation with my children yesterday because, you know, school year started and my son, he's got a little girl that he's befriended in his new school and great friends and having a good time with each other. And then she passes him a note. Do you like me or not checkbox, you know?
Oh, shit.
I don't know if that was on it, but I know that's the notes that I used to get.
Yeah, those are the notes.
But he was just like, you know, I'm just not into her, you know? And so I had him list some reasons why. And some were physical, some were not. I think one of the most important things was he said that he thinks her voice is annoying, and that's pretty much a no-go. If someone's voice annoys you, like there's diminishing returns of trying to be in a relationship with that.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at, I was like, man, you know, you guys have your own lives. You're going to make your own decisions. You know, I'm here to provide you guys with guidance and kind of, you know, based off the experience that I've had, and just, you know, the best that I can do is kind of explain to you guys how things can turn out, you know? Yeah. And I was like, dude, your best bet is not worry about women until you're 30. And I'm not saying that just to be the dad, hey, don't get a girlfriend until you're 30, or like my daughter, you got to be 40 before you get your first boyfriend, like just kind of jokingly,
Yeah.
But I just explained it in a way. It's like, for you to really realize who you are, what you're about, what you need, develop your own goals, and become the person that accomplishes those goals, become a quality individual that has developed yourself personally, developed yourself professionally, without the distraction of trying to cater to someone, especially like when you're young and, you might get focused on, you have your goals or whatever, but you're in a relationship with someone that doesn't support you. Those goals will just go away with the wind.
Yeah.
And you slowly start to become a version of yourself that you never wanted to be, or even a version of yourself that when that person that fell in love with you, even though they urged you to become that because it was what was comfortable for them. By the time you become that version of yourself that is not who you were meant to be or what you want to be, not only will you not be happy with yourself, they're probably not going to be in love with you anymore either.
Exactly.
And I know this based off of experience.
Same.
And, it's a situation where the better quality of individual you are and the less emphasis that you put on trying to find a girlfriend, trying to cater to having a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever it is, the less time you have to develop yourself. You can fast track your life and turn yourself into a supremely quality individual that provides so much value and has really figured out what it is that you need, that you will attract the right person that will then complement you with your goals, support you in your goals, and then you can become even better version of whatever it is that you can grow together. But to spend the time, the resources, the heartbreak, the just everything that it takes to be in relationships when you're young, and I still said, if you guys are going to make your own decisions regardless, but it's my job as a parent to kind of lay out how stuff can work out for you. And if you guys are serious about achieving your goals and making something of yourself and truly being happy and like successful as it relates to not only in business, but in your personal life, put that shit to the side. Focus on yourself. The main thing is figuring out who you are as an individual, what you need, building yourself into that and having goals, and the right person's going to come along. And then that's when you can really take off.
It's almost like with this podcast name being Authentic Identity, it's almost like you have to kind of build that. You got to start building something to find out, oh yeah, this is me, or maybe this isn't. I'm going to redo this corner of the house. I'm going to redo this foundational aspect of myself. I'm going to do away with that. This doesn't serve me any longer. Yeah, like I'm really glad the way things panned out in my life. But if I could have avoided my first and second marriages that were just waste of time, that were me just searching for validation from other people or approval, I could be a lot farther ahead than where I would be. So that would be great advice to pass on. I think you're doing it right.
Yeah.
As far as like parenting goes, let me put a cap in this to kind of end up, the wrap up on my my early years. So I was grounded a lot. I was led to a lot of confinement as a youth. So I started learning different skills. I learned how to sneak around and sneak out, which ended up serving me very well in the military. I learned how to break the rules without the appearance of breaking the rules, because that's how I would fly under the radar. And that's how I would get away with stuff. But I still had morals. I wasn't out there like doing heinous shit. Just some,
Not like you're breaking and entering in people's homes and things.
I mean, we got close. But yeah, power boxing people's power and toilet paper in them and stuff like that. Or I learned how to pick locks and jimmy cars open and stuff. Just for the challenge, I did. And so I'd sneak in, and my dad he'd see me at morning breakfast after I was literally home. Like, this is how ridiculous my parents were. Like, I got home, my curfew was like 10 o'clock because I had to fight for everything. So it's like 10:02, and my dad's looking at me through the front door window, and he closes the blinds and like the door is locked. And I'm like, hey, let me in. He's like, no, you're late. So he's basically locking me out for the night. But this, he doesn't know that I've got 2 or 3 entry points at all times into the home. So if he locks the basement window, I got the upstairs one, I got this one and that one. And so, and then if those all fail, like I could at least pick the side door garage lock, and then I could sleep in a sleeping bag in the Suburban on the back seats. And so I would be at like family breakfast the next morning, and he was all confused, like, I locked you out. How did you get in? And he's asking my mom, did you let Blake in? Like, nope. And I'm just kind of like smiling, eating some cereal. But with all those things, like I don't resent. I resent a lot of things about my parents. I don't resent the upbringing that you guys gave me. I'm talking to them directly now. I don't resent the upbringing you guys provided or the family life you guys gave me. I don't resent that. I resent the fact that you didn't know who the fuck I was. I didn't either. I was figuring it out, but you never let me find out. That's what I resent. I resent that even though I did find out who I was, that you've rejected me every step of the way, even in my adult life. That's what I resent about my parents. I never fit your mold. I'm sorry I was such a burden to you. But I'm never going to be, I take that back. I'm never going to be apologetic for who I am and who I'm going to be. I'm always going to strive to do that. I'm going to find my authentic identity. And that's what I resent about my upbringing, is the fact that still to this day, I am not accepted as who I am or what I've accomplished, what I've learned, and the causes that I've served, which we might get into later, a little bit deeper than military service, some contract stuff that I did. But I'm proud of what I did, but I'm the only one, other than Mal and some friends, maybe you.
I'm proud of you, brother.
Thanks, bro. But I've never been accepted as who I am. There's no space in my family, my previous family, for me to be of value to anybody. So that's what I resent.
But at the same time, I have a hard time resenting anything that I went through, even health stuff that I've gone through, because I've gone through some very, very extremely serious health issues. And what it does is it makes you uniquely qualified to help people, because you're not the only one, Blake. You're not the only one that has dealt with what you've dealt with. You're an extremely unique individual. However, there's other people out there like you. So for you having gone through what you've gone through and figuring out, who you are, what makes you tick, what your authentic identity is, as people, tune into this podcast, and maybe they're, a little bit younger than us, could be older or whatever it is, having gone through your experience and to get to where you are, it can provide value for them to understand that they're not alone, and that, hey, if this guy did it, that means I can do it too.
Thanks, dude. That's really nice of you to say, because I think that's the absolute truth of it. But I think what pains me and why I have resentment is because it causes me pain, right? Because I don't know, if somebody wrongs you, it's easy to resent them because there's pain associated with that. There's vulnerability. And I think it really comes down to this deep-rooted love that I have for my family, because I have excellent memories with them. I love my brothers. I love my sisters. I love my mom and dad.
And I'm sure they love you too.
I'm sure they do, but they really suck.
Yeah.
At that. Like, just bring me in, But that's where the resentment comes from, and it's a deep-seated love for them, and I've never been able to please them ever.
Yeah.
And so I've thrown myself against the rocks, banged my head against the brick wall just to be in good standings with these people. And it got to a point, because of their ignorance and because of my immaturity in a lot of instances as well, it got to a point where it didn't serve me at all. It didn't serve me to muscle through and stay in good graces with them, just for what, though? So I could continue losing myself and being miserable in what I truly was not. Like, staying in that realm, staying active in a church that doesn't appreciate me, that doesn't make sense to me anymore, that doesn't do anything for me mentally or physically or spiritually anymore, because of some polarizing experiences that I had. Staying in that church didn't do anything for me. Keeping up these relationships, sometimes they don't do anything for you. And I think that's part of finding out your authentic self is learning how to use a pair of scissors, figuratively, and start cutting people out of your life. That's self-care, is realizing, hey, this is not healthy anymore. I'm going to snip that out. Mm-hmm. This isn't serving me anymore. That's got to go. Or there's not enough of this. This needs to come in, right? And that's like the whole journey we're on. And so that's just me pointing out, why I resent my family in certain ways. And it kind of shows my immaturity still to this day, if I'm being honest. Like, I shouldn't let it bug me that much, but it does. I kind of choose to have that chip on my shoulder. It's like comfortable there, It's kind of my weakness as well.
It's amazing what we can get used to, having a chip on our shoulder or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's like a ready excuse I have sometimes.
But, and I'm not trying to say, hey, what they did was okay. At the same time, well, people are very much a product of their environment.
Yeah.
And, based off of their culture and their upbringing and what they believe to be right, they were just a product of their environment doing what they felt was the right way to do stuff. And it doesn't make it right. At the same time, like, man, being a parent
it's way hard.
One of the hardest things.
I haven't even done it yet. And I know it's looming over my head. Like, me and Mal are kind of like, should we do it? Should we not?
Well, knowing the people that you guys are, it's completely up to you, obviously. However, I feel like you guys would be able to be uniquely qualified to be great parents based off of your guys' upbringings, because I know Mal's had her own things that she's dealt with.
I think she would be an excellent guest on this podcast.
I think she would. But, it's just a situation where there's not great roadmaps to be a parent, especially with your first child, especially when you're super young, and then especially when you have certain cultures that maybe apply more pressure than necessary.
Yeah.
And they're just coming from a place of they're a product of their environment. Doesn't make it right. But, the person that you are, it didn't necessarily fit into what you needed. However, you were able to take a lot from it. And sometimes we have to pave our own path. We have to take those arrows in our back. And what that allows for, like I said, it makes you uniquely qualified to help people. There's a lot of things that I've done in my life that have very much been the hard way, but there's been a lot of people to benefit from it because I paved the trail for them.
Agreed.
I took the arrows in my back.
I think you've helped me a lot. Just your experience too. On that note, let me ring that bell for a second, dude. I think that's the real reason we're doing this podcast. Is we want to find out what's our authentic identity. What are we? Who are we? Who's Jared Everett? Who's Blake Norton? But the goal is, why are we recording this? We could just have conversations about this. So why are we sitting in a garage right now recording this on microphones and cameras? It's sweating our balls off.
Yeah, it's not cool in here.
It's not. It will be soon.
Yeah.
And then we'll put some air conditioning in here. But, we're cool enough. We keep places cool.
We've got our glasses on, so we're super cool.
Yeah, we're super cool. And I put my glasses up like this so I'm a shooter. Okay? This is what shooters do. If you've ever been to a gun range, this is way quicker than like putting it out over the hat,
Yeah.
So you're just like, let me get that up there.
I'll put my glasses like this because I'm a reader.
Yeah. So I think the real reason we're doing this is if we can help a couple people, if this can inspire somebody to do something, that's it.
Yep.
But I wanted to propose a thought to you, get your idea on this. Oh, sorry, Mal, what's up?
Last time we went over Jared's human design. I don't know if we want to do that for you today at all.
Yeah, we could close out on that. But one more thought here. No, like, you can interject all the time.
That's all I had.
Okay.
Take it away.
If you have more to say, we can mic you up next time.
That's okay.
So, Jared, I think you're talking about a good parent, right? So in our society, we don't really have anything that like marks a young man or like a coming of age for young women or men, right? Like
Rite
what
of
makes
passage.
you an adult? What's your rite of passage? For me, the most I ever felt like I had become into my own was after the Marine Corps, after all this hardcore shit I did. After, these things that society was telling me, you're a man, right? There's nobody more manly than a Marine in infantry school. Like, they think they're the shit, right? But that wasn't it. It was later on when I started taking accountability and understanding that I wasn't a product of my environment. They're kind of the same thing. Because I can say all day, my parents are a product of their environment, which they are. You grew up in some pretty horrific environments. Mm-hmm. Are you a product of that still? you recognize what you learned and what you lost and what you gained, pros and cons.
I use it as an example because people, they can use their environment as an example of what to do or what not to do, and my sisters, for example, are twins, and one used it as an example of what they don't want to do. And one, I completely love my sister and she's come a long way. She's doing amazing right now. But it was also like she could rationalize her decisions based off of her environment to basically go down the same exact path that her parents did.
So she chose to stay a product of her environment, right?
Yep.
And so I think that's where a lot of my resentment comes from my family, is because they choose to stay in that environment and to be a continual product of that environment. And so there's no self-growth. There's no self-realization. There's no betterment. There's betterment in their heads within this little box, but it's just bouncing around in the same box. You can't really grow. And so that's what I think is the mark of true growth, is when you can stop becoming a product of every environment you're in and you start becoming the product that shapes an environment. And every good parent I've seen now, because I saw how I was raised, I saw how my fellow Marines were raised and some of their stories, and how you were, and Jeff Fieldstead and Brandon Neal. And what makes a good parent today, tell me if you agree with this, is somebody that chooses to stop becoming a product and start creating the environment for themselves.
100% agree.
Yeah. A good parent is somebody who works on themselves more than they work on their kids. How they look, how they walk and talk, and if they're doing the things that make them look good. Like
leading by example.
Yeah, like that's it. Is they're actually walking the higher path themselves. They put the oxygen mask on first before they put that oxygen mask on their kid, right? And I think there's a lot of limitations if you're deeply into a religion, if you're living in a cultist fashion. I don't care what religion it is. If you're blinded by these things and you start judging people based off of what they do or how they act and walk and talk, and who gave the best testimony on fast and testimony meeting, and who did this, like that to me is just children. I don't think they're adults, because there's no ownership, there's no accountability, there's no understanding that like I need to improve if I'm going to be a better parent. If I'm going to give my kid an example, I have to be living that example. And that's why I like Solid. That's why I like Jefferson Rogers. That's why I like you. That's why I like the people that are in my life now. They understand that concept and they live it, right?
Yep.
Because it's really hard for me to take my dad seriously when he tells me to start following the word of wisdom and stop smoking and stop drinking. When he's gotten better, but at the time he was, drinking like 64 ounces of Diet Coke and
diabetic,
overweight, health problems. And then he's telling me I'm not living healthy, kind of hypocritical. So I think that's the biggest indicator.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the overweight doctor that comes in and tells you the healthiest thing you could do is get your vaccinations.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's how you know someone's full of shit. Their actions will speak louder than words. They were falling down anyway. I've been talking so much shit, I got to relight this sucker. It's the best part. But that was my little rant there. You got any thoughts on that?
I 100% agree, man. It's you can be a product of the environment or you can create the environment. I think that's very articulate, beautifully said. And I really appreciate it, because that's one of those little nuggets that sometimes that can just resonate so hard with someone that can be like the inspiration, and that's what leadership is. It's not telling people what to do. It's inspiring them what to do. And how do you inspire people? You communicate in ways that make sense to them. You lead by example. You don't just say, hey, go do that. You say, hey, let me show you how to do that.
Yeah, here's the things you're not doing well. Let me tell you what you need to be doing.
And something I've found in leadership is I'm very careful about my word usage. It's the same thing in sales, like exactly what to say.
That's a great book.
Yeah, Phil M. Jones. But I told my cousin to read it. I was like, look it up, Phil Collins. And he's like, dude, that's a singer. I'm like, oh yeah.
Can you feel it? Something in the air tonight. He also did the whole Tarzan soundtrack.
Oh, yeah.
Which is just
Oh, yeah.
fire.
But yeah, so that kind of threw me off a little bit.
The Phil Collins or the
Yeah, but it's being very, very careful in your word usage and your terminology, because it can be all the difference. And even when, I'm developing these next levels of leadership, and I love what Brooks Brunson, he's the COO of JKR Windows, he told me his vision of me. And he said, my vision of you is you're the ultimate mentor.
Ooh.
And I love that, because that's like, I feel like that's what, obviously I have a long way to go, but just being uniquely qualified, coming from various backgrounds and various things that I've been through, and to get to the point that I'm at, not only am, but where I'm going, it makes me uniquely qualified to help a lot of people. And that's all my big focus is. Money is never my focus. My impact is my focus, and the money always just is a byproduct of it.
And that's kind of what the vibe I get with this podcast is, that you want to make an impact too.
Exactly. And if this becomes we're consistent enough, we do it for long enough, and we get a big enough following, yeah, the if we make money off it, that'd be just a byproduct of it, definitely. But if we focus on the impact and the way that we can help people. And what I'm getting at, even using the term, would you be open to some constructive criticism?
Yeah.
I've changed that to, hey, would you be open to a little bit of feedback?
Yeah.
It just has such a different tone to it, because to add criticism to that.
Yeah.
It's like, let me criticize you. It's constructive. It's constructive criticism, but it's fucking criticism.
It goes back to what you said. The words you say matter.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
the
so
words we all say matter.
Inputting feedback, would you be open to a little bit of feedback?
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course I would,
I love that.
So that's just something I've really focused on, is the way in which I use my words and the power of words, because words are just so powerful. And I don't know if this is real or not, but I've heard several times over that like spelling is because like words like cast a spell.
Yeah, we were talking about this.
And you have to be very careful how you talk about people, and especially like in a situation where, maybe you have some problems with someone or problems with what they do, and you say, man, they're not doing this or not doing this or not doing that. You can kind of adjust it and be like, okay, well, do some highlights and stuff that they're doing well. And these are things that, we definitely have to work on this. And this is the progress that I've seen with this, and this is where we're going. Even
if they're not in the room present.
Exactly.
The way you frame it to someone else or even to yourself while you're driving is super crucial.
Exactly. So to speak that those positive things into reality, and the universe has a way of just connecting those things and making that a reality for them. On the contrary, or the other side of that, if we're doing it negatively, people will just kind of, if they say, well, you're not good at math. Okay, well, I'm just not good at math. I'm just not good at math.
Yeah. We latch onto these little labels, like
exactly. We latch onto labels.
I could never do door-to-door sales.
Yep, and that becomes your identity.
It does.
So just being super specific on how we talk about stuff and the progress that we're making and what the potential is. And then they'll latch on to that, and that will become their identity.
Absolutely. Since you brought up language, about the spelling, do you mind if I sprinkle a little context in there? Just
sprinkle away. Some magic
salt
Blake dust.
Yeah. So back, centuries ago, when like America and English was kind of first becoming a thing, it was agreed upon fairly early that English would be the world language, right?
Universal language of business, science.
Yes, and it has
Latin
to do...
is very much involved with that as well. But
yeah. And it has to do with English being a Germanic language deriving from Druid circles, and Druids were like witches and wizards, right? Very pagan. And it all derives from those things and the meanings of things. But then it also has to do with like maritime law and the way, just look at English as a whole, like the way we say like a mortgage is like a death grip derivative from that. Like, but it's a mortgage on your home, but it means literally till you die. Like it's a death grip. And then like the banks and the currency of the flow that's been on, beat to death on other podcasts. But everything we say, I think it has so much power, like you were saying. It's like we're casting spells. And we have all the power we need. If this is like a magic language that we're spelling, we're out here like fucking Harry Potter spelling shit, we can do it for good or for evil. And a lot of people that are unaware of this, they're a product of that environment, right? They're just using the language. They're not using it to their advantage. They're just a product of it. Like I'm never gonna, I'm just an employee. I just work here, or like the things we all say to ourselves that we're all guilty. Like I could never do door-to-door sales. I could never, like, there's a list of nevers and I can'ts that's longer than what you can do. But if you learn to get rid of those and everything becomes possible, now you're using this ancient wizard language for your own benefit. You're gaming the system. And you can go research the meanings of these words and understand, so you avoid them or you use them in a bit. It's just a tool.
Yep.
Really.
And I don't know where I heard it from, but a man with a pen is stronger than any army.
Yeah. Yeah, the pen is mightier than the sword.
Yeah, pen is mightier than the sword.
It is true. It's speaking, you're like speaking into existence. Like if you go back to Genesis of the Bible, God created the heaven, like by the word. Like these things were created. Like God spoke word, and then there was light. He used his voice, his words.
And I think that's where like the Lutheran version of Christianity came from. Oh boy, basically he would post like scriptures translated from like Latin into English or whatever. He would actually like put it, like write it down, and he was the first dude to post stuff. He would go like pin it up somewhere.
Yeah, it was, he translated from Latin into German.
Yeah.
And then he was the first, is it Gutenberg? It was Martin Luther.
Martin Luther, yeah.
Yeah, it was the priest. But the Gutenberg printing press was actually like kind of close to Frankfurt. There's tons of rich history there. That's where I served my LDS mission. But yeah, that was such a huge thing, because the common man now could understand the full context of these powerful scriptures in their own life without the help of a mediator.
Because it had to go through that mediator.
Yes.
It had to go, so the power, all of that, you had to go through that mediator to get it. And he was just like, let me go against the Catholic Church.
Yeah, he wanted to empower the people.
And
which is crazy.
And it was a huge thing. And they had his head on the chopping block.
Yeah,
but he was so well respected that he was protected.
Here's the thing too, for anybody listening, is you don't need a mediator between you and God. You don't. Like they'll tell you all day that you need a prophet, that you need a pope, that you need somebody. I think there's power in a religious structure. Definitely. Like there's power in organization of man, but there's also a lot of weakness, a lot of corruption, and a lot of things that can be taken advantage of. But you don't need someone in between you and your connection to God or source or Christ or whatever label you want to use. You don't need someone else. And so that's what was happening, is people were paying the church back then with Martin Luther. They were paying the church, paying the priests, paying to get their sins forgiven, basically by, prepaying. That's kind of what was going on. Is people like, hey, I'm going to a brothel this week. I want to prepay for forgiveness. And so they'd like go prepay for the sins they were going to commit, which is like weird. So when there's a mediator between you and God, that's how you lose control. That's how you become a product of an environment. That's how you lose your divinity, is when you have someone else dictating to you what that is. Now, if you have a pastor or maybe even a prophet or somebody, a religious leader that you look up to, that's different. But don't let them be the mediator between you. We already have a mediator. If you're Christian, which I subscribe to Christianity still, my mediator is Jesus Christ. He's the only one that can mediate to God for my soul. because he's up there as well. He's part of the Godhead in a lot of religions, or he's up there on the right hand of God. Like he's the person that I would want to have mediating for me. Not Brother Sorensen down the street, or not so-and-so, or not the Pope Francis or whatever one they're on now, or Pope Frankenstein or whatever. I think he's Polish. I don't know. I don't keep up with that stuff. But you don't need someone else to mediate for you in your relationship with God. That's the biggest lie that's ever been told to mankind, I think, is that you need someone here on the planet doing it for you.
Yeah. And understanding human nature, when people have power, they're going to do everything they can within their power to retain that power.
Yeah, and to grow it.
And to exercise that authority over you. And that was a huge reason why they didn't want people to have access to that, because they had the ultimate power to basically have people do what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And one man decided to step up and say, hey, let me translate this, more or less in layman's terms for you guys, so you can understand without having to go through this power structure to have your connection to God, which is within you.
Yeah, it's there the whole time. It's part of your authentic identity. To tie it back into this whole podcast, it's who you really are, I think, is understanding that there is a divine nature to you as an individual. Like there's something that Jared Everett can offer this world that nobody else can, because you're uniquely you. Now, we might be subject to the same culture and, because we all grew up watching South Park and like the same stuff. Like we're all Americans, so we're going to have a lot of similarities. But when you really start on understanding your authentic identity, that's when you truly become unstoppable.
Yep.
And it takes a lot of unpacking, and that's why we talked about our early years, right? That's why we kind of went deep into my upbringing a little bit. We didn't go super deep, but deep enough, I think. You have to unpack that, I think, right? You have to understand, okay, where did I come from? Why do I think this way? Why is this way? Does this serve me or does it not? And then you scrap it or you keep it. And you keep doing that throughout life. And even, as we grow, like 3 years from now, like you're going to be kind of unpacking the last couple of years and being like, okay,
yeah,
what have I learned? What's good? What can I keep?
What my plans are for the next 5 years. If I thought the last 3-4 years were a huge change in who I am and what I'm about and how far I've come, tip of the iceberg. I got a long way to go for what the 5-year plan is.
Yeah,
for
we
sure.
got a lot of discovery ahead of us, which is awesome. So I think the message then is, don't be discouraged if you're at where you're at. Like, be sure to look back every now and then, unpack what you've learned, discard and keep some, and then keep moving on. Keep finding out who you are. Mal, did you want to go over a great tool that we used last week or last episode? Was that?
And I don't want to put a rush on it, but I got to get it wrapped up here pretty quick.
Get wrapped up.
Yeah, you're at an hour 42 run time. So
Holy shit! Yeah, we'll do it next time.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that. We'll dive deeper. We'll kind of lay out a human design or the human design, and we'll kind of go into each category. Talk about yours. Talk about mine again. Talk about Mal's, but just to give people some context of what's available in that, and they can do their own research.
and something I had an idea for, because if you guys don't know, Blake is he's about his conspiracies. So I would like to, maybe every couple episodes we have a little segment where we just take a deep dive into that, and I think that will also provide some context in terms of understanding who Blake is, for sure.
Oh yeah, that's a big part. Yeah, I like uncovering. I like knowing what's going on as much as I can, which is impossible. But I like learning about that stuff. It's important because it kind of shapes who we are. If we just to give you an example, if you think the world is round versus someone who thinks the world is flat, because there's both arguments out there these days, it does at a microcosm shape you and help you determine how to act and live and walk and talk and breathe. Like, it matters to know. Like, if we think our government really took us to the moon, we act differently than if we find out that they lied to us. And I'm a big advocate of that. I don't think we went to the moon at all, at least in that way, not how we were shown, so that we can get into that, because that shapes my actions as a citizen of this country, which is huge part of my identity and yours, right? Because of where we live. So yeah, we'll go into that too, and then I think we're going to start a cigar club for sure. I think here in St. George, and so I don't know what we'll name that yet. Probably just like the St. George Cigar Club for now, or whatever. If it grows bigger, we'll change it. But definitely doing a cigar club. What else? What other visions you got for this thing and wrapping up?
Yeah, you know, that's something that I feel like we could really get some good feedback from you on, and then, you know, me coming from a place of having those conversations, which I do believe in conspiracies, but I would say I'm much more conservative than you. So I think it would be a good dialogue in terms of just kind of like unpacking.
Yes. I'm very conservative in where I like place my actual belief.
Yeah.
I'm not conservative in exploring everything though.
Exactly.
If it intrigues me, I'll explore it all the way to the end.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean my eggs are in that basket.
And, you know, and I think it could also help me because I'm intentional about not spending a lot of time with that stuff because I don't feel like I have a lot of control over it. And for me to worry about something I don't necessarily have control over, I just don't feel like it serves me. However, you know, as we build an audience and as we can provide some context behind some of this stuff, you know, maybe there is some control within that.
It's control. That's a good one. We could talk about it. Every time we bring up a conspiracy, we should talk about control. It is a little bit doom and gloom to find out or to even suggest these ideas, you know, like, oh man, if this is true, then that means, you know, X, Y, Z. You can really get into some negative trenches. And so I think it's important that you do have some control with it and some awareness of yourself to dive as deep as you want.
Yeah. And then just, you know, understanding the bigger picture. And this is not just from a government standpoint. This is within a lot of business organizations, and it could be within church organizations or whatever it is, just to kind of get the understanding of, you know, people don't always have your best interest in mind. And that's something that I've really figured out over, you know, the last several years, especially being like within leadership and being under a microscope. I assume best intentions to a fault. And, you know, it's been kind of a slap in the face, but also like understanding what this world really is that not everybody's going to have your best interest in mind. And for you to operate in a way to where you can understand that, I would always recommend assuming best intentions, but also understanding just because you assume that doesn't mean that's the reality, and to position yourself in a way to where you can protect yourself to a certain degree, because, you know, you can have a lot of trust and assume best intentions with people, and they could turn right around and not have the best intentions for you, and that can affect your income. It can affect the value that you feel for yourself. It can affect your reality.
Well, even an experienced, you know, skydiver, they always have a reserve chute. But they always assume best intentions that their first parachute will save them.
Yeah,
but they still have redundancy built in. So
exactly, help you hedge that bet a little bit.
It does. Well, dude, Jared, thanks for being here again, bro.
Yeah, thank you,
and,
brother.
We'll get this garage cooled off here soon. Either the weather will do it, or we'll put an AC unit in here. But
well, we're towards the end of August, so
yeah,
you know, it's gonna start cooling down.
Yeah, cool down. But, thanks for joining us, everybody. This is Authentic Identity. I'm Blake.
I'm Jared.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out, and may the force be with you.
The fourth.
Always.